Okay, just a quick story time video. I'm going to be talking about some childhood memories I had from back in the summer of 1986, specifically July 1986. That was the year, it was between 7th and 8th grade. I was 13 years old, and we spent the summer, not the whole summer, but about 3.5 weeks of the summer up at my aunt's ranch in California. We originally flew down there near the end of June, and we met them in Anaheim, California, where we got to visit Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm. I think we went to Knott's Berry Farm a couple times. And then I think after the first week or so, we went to stay on my aunt's ranch. And it was a pretty eventful trip. There was a whole lot to do. Then when we got to the ranch, there wasn't really that much to do. So we were just kind of sitting around and not doing much all day. I did finally get to get VHS copies of Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, and for about a week, I got to watch those movies as much as I wanted, and they weren't official releases. They were, I guess you say, bootleg recordings off the HBO broadcasts. But anyway, I didn't care back then. I think I watched Return of the Jedi every single day for that whole week. But we were also doing yard work. She kept us busy around the house, and she paid us money, I think like $5 a day to go outside and pull weeds or whatever. And so by that end of that first week, the weekend was probably, I don't know, maybe the 12th or something of July in 1986. My cousin decided to take us out to basically go shopping and spend the money that we had made. And it was pretty exciting time. She was promised basically to take us to Toys R Us. And at that moment, I had never been to a Toys R Us before. And so we headed out, me and my brother and my cousin. And just for reference, my cousin was in her 30s. She was way older than us, so she drove us there herself. And I was 13, my brother was 14. And beginning of the trip, my brother and I pulled our money together. First thing we bought was a gift for our mom, and we kind of went to the mall to do that. Kind of wandered around the mall. It seemed like we were in the mall forever, but the only thing I really remember about that is we stopped at a Sears, and I think this was the point where my cousin was just kind of shopping for herself for a little bit because we were going through the clothing sections and she was looking at a lot of clothing. But then I think at the top of one display, I spotted some G.I. Joe figures and some vehicle, the G.I. Joe Snowcat, and it was actually pretty cool. I had probably still close to, well, yeah, though it still had over $20 on me to spend. And this, at the time, Snowcat was about $9, and I was gonna buy it because I just thought it was awesome. I've always loved snow vehicles. Probably goes right back to the first seeing photos of the Hoth battle from Empire Strikes Back. But then my cousin and my brother, they're just like, well, no, we're gonna head over to Toys R Us right after this. So you don't want to spend all your money here, and then we get to Toys R Us and something you want even more, and then you won't be able to afford it, which made sense at the time. So we headed out, drove down to Toys R Us. I remember going into the store. It was a classic Toys R Us design from the 80s with the multicolored storefront and everything. It was just amazing. And so we go in there, and I think I just kind of got overwhelmed by it all. I was just walking in, just trying to take in the whole thing. I had never been in a toy store that large before. I was just used to the little single toy aisle at the grocery store, and so I was just kind of wandering around, looking at stuff. I don't remember much of what I saw, and I guess I kind of fell behind, and my brother and my cousin, they got way ahead of me. So when I finally caught up with them, I saw my brother was going through some action figures, a section of action figures in the store, and I was kind of, and I looked and I was like, okay, these are Star Wars figures, but they were on a card design that I had never seen before, and something unusual, and I didn't know anything about the release of the Power of the Force line. At the time, the last Star Wars figures I'd gotten were all on the Return of the Jedi cards, and so it was kind of surprising to see that and I kind of assumed that they just stopped making Star Wars figures with Return of the Jedi, but I was kind of surprised to see they were still making figures. And so my brother was going through them, and I kind of waited for him to get done because, I don't know, it was kind of like the unwritten rule when it came to Star Wars that my brother had first claim on almost any figure. Well, other than that, so I got a chance to go look at them, and Here's a card of one of them. And of course, the first thing I do is I look at the I want to look at the back of the card to see what all figures they made, because by this point I've had a wish list of figures I want to see for several years now. And so I look, and first figure I want to look for is a Darth Vader with a removable helmet. And of course, that's not on here. Kenner never made one. And I was like, okay, that's kind of disappointing. Okay, what's next figure I want to look for is I want Chewbacca in his scruffy looking Return of the Jedi hairstyle. That's an update of the old 1977 figure. And of course, that's not on here either because they never updated Chewbacca. And so that's strike two. Then after that, I'm just like, well, the Stormtroopers from Return of the Jedi, they were like the helmets on those Stormtroopers were a different design than the Stormtroopers from Star Wars or Empire Strikes Back. And this was obvious to me right from the very start. And I was like, well, maybe they made a new Stormtrooper, updated the armor, and actually made one that can actually turn his head. And of course, that wasn't on here either. And well, from a certain point of view, maybe it is on here, but still, we'll get to that later. And the last one I was thinking, well, we need R2-D2 with a third leg, because at the time I thought they had never released an R2-D2 with a third leg. I had no idea the Droid Factory R2 existed. And I look on the back of the card and I see the pop-up lightsaber R2, and I was like, that's kind of stupid. I don't like that. And I wanted the third leg version, so I was not impressed with the lightsaber, the R2 with the lightsaber that came out of his head. But I mean, my opinion on these figures has changed since then, but I'm just trying to give my 13-year-old, the opinion in my 13-year-old brain at the time. So I can actually remember my thoughts to most of these after looking at them. EV-99, cool. I remember the droid from the movie. Thought that was awesome. Han Carbonite, I was kind of surprised that they made them, and I kind of feel like I would have been more excited if they released them maybe a couple years earlier, a year or two earlier, but that was cool. I wanted him right off the bat, and as I saw each one that I liked, I would just kind of glance at the figures in front of me to see if I spotted them. The next ones on the list were the two Ewoks, Warrock and Ramba, and that discovery actually kind of annoyed me a little bit, because up until 1985, up until 86, I actually owned all 6 of the Ewok figures. I had Wicket, Logray, Chirpa, Tebow, and I got Papalu and Lumat back when they were originally released on the Return of the Jedi cards, 79 back cards. These were some of the last figures I got in 85, and so I spent a year being under the impression that the line ended at 79 figures, and that I owned all 6 Ewoks, but now, because of this, now I couldn't say that I owned all the Ewoks anymore, which I found actually really annoying. Barada, I was holding a Barada card in my hand, and I was looking at the figure, and first thing that kind of struck me about the figure is kind of how buff the action figure is compared to the actual photo on the card. And I thought that's kind of, I thought that was funny, but I didn't hate it. And I thought the design of the alien looked really cool. He just kind of was like this kind of tough bulldog-looking alien guy. And so this was one I was considering getting, because I was like, this is actually a really cool figure. And this is also incidentally why when they brought the Star Wars figures back in 95, I wasn't necessarily surprised that they buffed them all, made them all like super buff and super muscular. It just seemed like that was the direction Kenner was heading just before the line ended anyway. But then back to the list of figures. Oh, I actually skipped over the Imperial Dignitary. I looked at him. I was like, that's kind of surprising. I didn't remember him from the movie. I looked up, and I actually saw him on the pegs. And I pulled up. I don't have one with me to use for reference, but I just remember looking at him. I was like, yeah, this would be a really cool figure to have with my Darth Vader and Emperor. But the downside is my Darth Vader and my Emperor figures, those are back home in New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico, where we lived at the time. It's like, I don't have them here with me in California. And we're going to be here at my aunt's ranch for at least another week, which when you're 13 might as well be 6 months. And so I just like, yeah, Imperial Dignitary. It's interesting that they made him, but he's not going to be very fun to play with all by himself. So I kind of lost interest in him pretty quick. General Lando, I thought that was awesome. That was another one that I would really have wanted if I could have actually found him. Anakin, we actually got an Anakin. We didn't mail away for him, but I guess some friends of ours either they got him and they didn't like him, so they gave him to my brother and I, or maybe they got more than one. But I just remember like early 1986, we got an Anakin figure, and I thought it was cool. So, but I wasn't gonna look for another one. Then Luke Stormtrooper, that kind of blew my mind because now you see that okay, now they're actually going back and they're making figures from the original film. So, and I thought, okay, that opens up tons of possibilities. I quickly scanned. I didn't see any hint that there's a Han Stormtrooper on there, which was a bit disappointing. If you grew up in the 80s on the original films, you kind of know most. It was the fans are kind of divided up into two categories. There was Luke Skywalker kids and there was Han Solo kids. And I was firmly a Han Solo kid. My brother was very firmly a Luke Skywalker kid. So I saw Luke on there. I knew that's one my brother's going to want, so I'm not going to worry about it. Imperial Dignitary kind of struck me. I thought it was kind of cool that he's a solid black. And at least you can't see the red visor that well from the tiny little photo. But it's at the time I was really into G.I. Joe, and it was just kind of cool. Kind of reminded me of Snake Eyes, which also was a solid black figure, which actually solid black, where they didn't put any paint apps on it at all. The Dignitary actually had a few paint apps. But this one was interesting because when my brother walked away, because I guess he didn't see any figures he wanted on the shelf, he actually turned the card around and showed it to me, and he pointed straight to the Dignitary, skipped right over the Luke Skywalker figures. He pointed straight to the gunner, and he said, "If you find this one, I want him." And at the time, I knew what that meant was that he wanted it for himself, and even if I found two, he wanted both of them. He didn't want me to have one at all. He just wanted it all for himself, which kind of makes my brother sound like a bit of an asshole, but you know, he was 14. Okay. Indoor Luke, called him Poncho Luke at the time. Same with Poncho Leia. I didn't start calling him Indoor Luke, Indoor Leia till like the 1990s. But another one, it's like, okay, it makes sense that they made him. I had no idea the helmet was non-removable, because that would have made no sense. But yeah, just, again, my brother was a Luke Skywalker kid, not me. Then we saw the A-Wing pilot, and I was like, okay, that's awesome. I had the A-Wing model kit back around 84 and stuff, and I always thought it was a cool vehicle, and I was like, well, if they made an A-Wing pilot, then they had to have made an A-Wing. I mean, it wouldn't make sense any other way. And yeah, they did, but not really. Not in the actual movie Star Wars line. So then I had Paploo and Lumat. I already had them for a year before I even knew this line existed. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people call it the last 17, and no, it's not 17, it's 15. There were only ever 15 figures, because Paploo and Lumat are Return of the Jedi figures, not Power of the Force. And then Man, another one, were just like, holy cow, that's kind of crazy. I mean, that's a really bizarre looking alien. I don't remember him from the movie at all, but he looks really awesome. And so after I went through all these, I started scanning the pigs, looking to see what I could find. I was obviously keeping my eye open for Hunt Carbonite. I was keeping my eye open for Man and EV99 and all them. I had the Barada figure in my hand, and I didn't find much. I had already seen the Imperial Dignitary. I kind of struck him off the list. Another thing to note was that these were the figures were on clearance. So this was July 86, long after the line had been canceled. And they all had the standard Toys R Us sticker, but the price itself was marked out, and there was a 2 for $1 written on top of them. So they were basically 50 cents each. So I was like, well, I got Barada, and I kind of have to take advantage of that 2 for 1 deal. And so then I was going through, and I don't have one on the card because they're super rare, but this is a Jawa. I found one of him on the Power of the Force card. And this is not a vintage Jawa. This is the Hasbro Retro Collection Jawa. But for the purpose of this video, he'll do. Then there's the Barada, my loose Barada. And so I had them too. I saw others. I did see Paploo and Lumat on the Power of the Force cards. Again, I already had them. I think I had somehow 2 Lumats by 1986. Because I think our grandparents got me one, and my aunt sent me another one a few months later. Pretty sure I saw the ATST driver, maybe the B-Wing pilot, because I remember these guys being very, very common back in those days. You usually saw a lot of them on the shelves. I don't know. I might have seen Indoor Leia. My brother, we already had her. My brother was he was Luke Skywalker kid, and he was also a huge fan of Princess Leia, so he had the Princess Leia figure. And that was it. Absolutely, the only two actual Power of the Force figures I found were Barada and the Imperial Dignitary. And I had already struck the Imperial Dignitary off the list. I didn't want him. So I was like, well, they have the Jawa. At the time, I had I'd gotten original Jawa back in Christmas 1980. And by 81, 82, I have no idea what happened to the figure, but it was gone. I didn't have one. And so I was like, well, I want another Jawa. And so I'll get Jawa and the Barada figure. And so I started by this point, my brother and my cousin, they were already out of the aisle. They had moved on. And so I was like, well, it's something. I started getting impatient. I'm taking too long. I glanced at some of the other Star Wars stuff, and I'm pretty sure I saw some body rigs, but nothing super memorable. So I grabbed the Barada, and I grabbed the Jawa, and I started heading out the aisle. But then at some point, before I got to the end of the aisle, I just stopped. And I kind of just thought to myself, it's like, no. Like, I'm collecting G.I. Joe now. I'm not collecting Star Wars anymore. I was kind of a very single-minded kid when it came to collecting. It was the three big lines that we collected were Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, and I was just all in. If we were collecting G.I. Joe, that's all I wanted was G.I. Joe. I didn't want anything else. And same with Transformers, same with Star Wars. So I just thought to myself, like, no, I'm not buying Star Wars figures anymore. Even though they only cost $1 for these two, I'm not going to get them. So I set them down, and I moved on out the aisle and kind of tried to catch up with my brother and cousin. And by the time I found them in the next aisle, my brother was going through another clearance section of Star Wars stuff. And he had found the Max Rebo Band 3-pack, and he had the one of the micro collection sets, the Shield Generator set, the one that came with a little Scout Walker. And I think the Rebo Band was like on clearance for $2 or $3, and the micro collection set was like $1.25. So this was like I didn't know it at the time because I saw all these new figures. I was like, wow, I didn't realize they were still making Star Wars stuff. But this was the last dying breath of the Star Wars line at retail in the 1980s. And so I saw, well, if my brother's buying Star Wars toys, then I could probably go back and grab those two. But by this time, I think my cousin was getting a little impatient because she wanted to go get some food and go home or whatever. She kind of spent enough time with us by that point in the day. And she was like asking if we were ready to go, and I wanted to run back. I wanted to go back there and grab those figures, and I just didn't. And my brother said, well, he wanted to look at the G.I. Joe stuff, because at this point I had nothing. I hadn't bought anything. So we went and looked at the G.I. Joe toys. I remembered seeing that Snowcat at Sears, and so I looked to see if there was another one here, because I was hoping to buy it here, because I think, again, a snow-themed vehicle reminds me of Hoth, and so that's kind of the one I wanted. But the only vehicle I found that I could get was the Havoc, which is a newly released vehicle at the time. Really big. It wasn't $9. It was probably more like $13 or $14 stuff. So I picked up that. My brother got the what's that called? The Thunder Machine, the Dreadnoks Thunder Machine. And I picked up a couple figures. I saw General Hawk, Lady J. I picked up them too. Then I saw the Iceberg figure, which was another new figure for '86, and I was like, man, if I had got that Snowcat, I would have this. I could have gotten this Iceberg too, because he's a Arctic themed trooper. And I was like, you would have gone real well with that Snowcat, but whatever, I don't have it now. And it's like, and it was basically either settle for the Havoc and these other two figures, or leave empty-handed, because we weren't going to any other stores after this. So I bought that, and I bought those two figures in that vehicle, and I kept thinking about those two Star Wars figures that I just left sitting in the aisle, and I wanted to run back and grab them, but at the time I was a quiet kid. I wasn't very good at speaking up for myself or anything, and so I just kind of didn't say anything. I thought, well, I'll get home, I'll start playing with the Havoc and these new figures, and that'll be fine. I'll forget all about it. So then that was true for a little while. I kind of forgot about it for a bit, but I kept remembering those two figures I put down and never bought. Then at the end of the trip, the second week of the trip it was only eventful in the fact that it was terrifying every single day, because our aunt had signed us up for swimming lessons. I don't know how to swim, and I was terrified of water, and the teacher we had for the swimming lesson was just did such a bad job that I'm probably even more terrified of water now than I was before taking that class. But I still don't know how to swim. But so the end of the trip, I finally went home, flew back to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and started telling neighbor kids about what we had seen, the new Star Wars figures, and never knew. Like I said, I never knew they existed, but he knew. And he had said he kept telling us that he had some, but he refused to bring them over for us to look at. But he did have a planetary map, and he brought that over for us. And one notable thing I know about the planetary map, excuse me. Let's see if I can unfold this without tearing it, because this paper gets a little... Well, the notable thing about the planetary map is that there's a 93rd figure on there. And I was like, oh, wow, there's another one. I thought at the time I saw 14 new figures, and then now there's 15 new figures, because now there's a yak face. Which, these planetary maps were packed in the vehicles that were sold right alongside all the figures. And the fact that yak face is in that catalog kind of, in my mind, shoots down the idea that he was intended to be some kind of mail-away figure. But there was also, if you go through the map, anyway, I don't want to mess it up, but you see the A-Wing, we see the shuttle Tydirium, we see the Tatooine skiff, and I remember having the old Return of the Jedi catalogs. I remember at the time, the shuttle Tydirium was just a drawing in those catalogs, so it was cool to see the final toy. Same with the skiff, and then they didn't do a drawing of it, but they had like a still from the movie of the battle on the skiff. But I saw that, and then the A-Wing, I was like, okay, that's awesome. And there was no A-Wing pilot, so I don't have a figure to go with it. But it's not like the vehicle was going to be easy to find anyway, or any of these were going to be easy to find. But so that kind of kept the fire alive for Star Wars for me at the childhood. At the time where I thought 85 I was done collecting. But by this point it was just, okay, this is still going on. It wasn't still going on, but in my mind I thought it was still going on. So, but yeah, and those two figures, the Barada and the Jawa, again, these aren't the actual ones that I put down in the store, because if I had actually bought them, I probably wouldn't be making this video. Probably would have played with them, trashed them, and forgotten all about them. But yeah, they just kind of kept weighing on my mind. I kept thinking about them over and over again. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. So, and that, like I said, the obsession with Star Wars and the Power of the Force figures, the last 17 name, that's a new thing, but I just called them the Power of the Force figures for the rest of my junior high and high school years. Because he was, went back, started 8th grade, and then high school. So I just kept asking every kid I knew who used to collect Star Wars if they knew about the Power of the Force figures. And most of them had no clue, because they kind of quit collecting around 84, 85. And never knew a single person who actually had any of them, and never saw them again in a store, even though I kept hoping every time I would go to a new store, like a mall somewhere, or a Walmart, or a grocery store. Our grocery store is called Skaggs Alpha Beta, and I just kept thinking that someday I'm going to turn the corner into a toy section of a store, and I'm going to see all those Power of the Force figures again, and that never happened. So I never, as a kid or as a teenager, I never had a chance to correct my mistake and buy those two figures that I passed up on. And like I said, I guess that's pretty much the whole story. And eventually, and I do have the Barada, and I keep my eye open for Jawa on the card. That's in decent enough shape, and I think when I get the two figures, I'm just going to keep them forever. Maybe I'll put it in my will that I want to be buried with them or something, just so that I don't leave them behind again. And so, but yeah, that's basically the whole story. All right. I hope this wasn't too long, and thank you for listening. Oh yeah, and if you like the shirt, I'll put a link in the description where you can get one. And I'm not a paid sponsorship in any way. I just really like the shirts, and you can get a whole bunch more, not just Star Wars, but other pop culture shirts and stuff. So, all right, thanks for listening. Bye.